Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome editor Esther Sokolow, who joins us to talk about their work on It, Welcome to Derry. Esther will talk us through her experiences of editing episodes 1, 2, 4, and 6 of the show. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Esther. Hi Esther, thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're here to talk about It, Welcome to Derry, which came out last year. I think it's like the tail, or like October, November time. How have you found the reception to the show? And what's surprised you most about it?
Well, the reception has been so overwhelming and so special. When we were on the show for nearly 2.5 years, there were some hiatuses because of the strikes and whatnot, but we've been working on the show for such a long time, and we're always thinking about the audience, thinking about the fan reception and pouring everything into it. But there's always that question of, will they receive it the way that it's intended? And I'm very tapped at online. I'm reading what the fans are theorizing, and it was really, really fun to see how people embraced it. There were people doing TikTok dances to the main title sequence, and Andy and I were sending them back and forth to each other. It was just really, really what we had hoped, and then surpassed our wildest dreams, which was really wonderful.
I think it's funny that people do TikTok videos to like the intro, like it's a bit. I guess in a way it's like what's next that people can do in this world,
Well, I think it's really honestly very fitting for the character of Pennywise and the genre, because so much of horror has an element of humor to it. So seeing people being a little cheeky with the music, doing dances that don't fit necessarily the genre of the show, whatnot. I don't know. It's fun. I feel like people got it. They got what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and I guess with like clown, you kind of associate it with like funniness and sort of like joy and happiness and whatnot. Obviously,
Totally.
complete opposite in this show, though.
Yes, there's a dark irony to a lot of it, and obviously we played a lot of that cheekiness in the scares as well. That like there's horror, and then there's also like still a pickled tentacle monster and whatnot. Like it's the irony is part of the charm.
Yeah, 100%. But then also part of it as well, like I'm curious to know, and I might as well just ask this off the bat: how do you not have nightmares when you edit something like this? Because it's just like looking back at it and you're watching stuff. I must admit, I watch stuff during the day. I can't hack it at night because it's just vivid imagination. And then, when you're walking up the stairs, it's like, nope, gonna run up the stairs because I don't want to get pulled down. As ridiculous as it sounds as a grown man to say this, but yeah, how do you not have nightmares whilst editing the footage?
I mean, it's a good question. Well, first of all, one of the things about the footage itself is Andy does so much practically. So, even when there's elements that we enhance with visual effects, the footage itself is real. So yeah, it can be pretty scary, but a lot of the, the task in editing is those additive elements. So you're looking for, building the empathy of the character first, and then looking for like, how can you rhythmically subvert expectations with where the audience will anticipate a scare or not. So there may be a very obvious scare in the footage, but part of the fun in the editing process is when do you drop it? So yeah, there are times where the footage is scary just innately. And then there are times where we're massaging the footage, enhancing it with sound and visual effects. And I won't say that I ever had any nightmares, but I will, my amazing assistant editor, Janie Gaddy, and I've told this story before, so I hope she'll forgive me for finding so much glee in telling it again. But in the mother thing sequence, which is what we call the scare with Ronnie's birth, and her mom emerging from the bed frame, the dailies for that were all practical. It was Ronnie really covered in goo. She's like got a tentacle attached to her that's this umbilical cord that's like pulling her in. And there's a moment where she takes the umbilical cord and bites it, and this like goopy, mucusy, bloody thing like squirts in her mouth. All of that's real. Like none of that was enhanced in any way. And when the footage came in, my assistant had to reach for the trash can, and like she was able to like pause, but that footage without any treatment or anything had such a visceral response. But that, for me, I lit up when she told me that happened. Like this was the most exciting day on the entire production, because to me it was like, we're doing everything right. Like this, like you wanted to have that feeling of like, you're going to lean forward, like what's going to happen. And then also that moment of like, it's so horrible, I have to look away, or it's so horrible, I'm frozen in place and I can't look away. And so much of horror is looking for creating a physical reaction in the audience. So for me, I find a lot of joy in that process. So less nightmares for me, but can't say the same for everyone else.
I guess, like, I know they might not like the story being told, but it's like, yeah, it is one of those that it's just like, that is just sort of legendary in a way now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You can't say no, like you have to say it now, and then people are gonna bump into you, and that's like the sort of thing that they can, be like, you're the person who I got sick watching the things. It's like, yeah, that was me.
Yep. Yeah.
But then at the same,
and Janie was my right-hand woman in every single day of that show. So she knows how much I utterly adore her. And if I have to use this one anecdote to display my like deep love for what she brought to the process, I will.
And to be fair, it's not like necessarily a bad thing. Like,
yeah,
there's what was it? Like, there could be so many other things that could be so much worse regarding it.
Yeah.
Because there's always like certain things that happen on film sets that you have stories and people like, yeah, that's that person who did this, or that's that person that did that. There's stuff that's like really, 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 really overblown. And you're just like, what? Like, that didn't happen. It didn't happen that way, but
right.
I just roll with it.
Completely.
But sort of going back to the show itself, and you're mentioning about like the practical elements and then building up the scenes. How do you allow, when you're going through dailies and seeing sort of the best takes and also seeing how the sort of gruesomeness and whatnot of the scenes, how do you start putting the scenes together and allowing the moment for actors to shine with their terror, but then also other crew members with their prosthetics and animatronics, and also the hair and makeup team sort of all coming in and adding their spice to the stew? Is there a balance of like, you want to show more of that side, or do you want to show more of like the terror side of it all?
Well, for me, character is always the guiding principle. So, I mean, Andy is brilliant, both about putting all the best creative collaborators together and then finding the most incredible actors, incredible children actors to discover these characters and bring them to life. So I don't tend to concern myself too much about like showcasing the production design, although Paul Osterberry, our production designer, is spectacular, and I've worked with him on many, many films. The hair and makeup, like the prosthetics, all of those is everyone operating at their top tier game. But then we're crafting like what feels the most authentic and the most resonant, both for the characters and treating the show as their lived experience, and then also the audience as the guiding compass. So I mean, Andy designs the frame to ensure that each department's best work is coming forward. And then Andy and I are very, very meticulous in the edit together about putting the best version of the construction together. But we're very focused on story and character and propelling it that way. In terms of the planning that goes into putting a scene together, especially these large scare sequences that kind of are the centerpieces of each episode, there's so much planning ahead of time to do as much practical as possible. Especially with our child actors, you want their environment to be as immersive as it can be. So one of the things that we did with the station wagon sequence is we shot it on a volume wall. So it's actually Maddie and the two kids and the parents in a station wagon, and then there's LED screens like in a 360 or 180 semicircle around them, projecting what they would be driving past. And that was a very meticulous pre-shoot that was, Andy and I cut the sequence using storyboards and previs to figure out how long the scene would run, how you would want the driving plates to pass by in the background. But then that allowed him the freedom with the actors that they could just run the scene. Like it was just, that's the 10-minute scene, them acting and it getting weirder and whatnot. And then you don't have to be dependent on visual effects of like, oh, I can only cut so many times because of a blue screen window that we have to, paint out. So there's a lot of freedom in the edit to let it just exist if the right steps are taken in pre-production to allow you that degree of freedom, which Andy always works to protect us on.
I think that's always great to hear the sort of pre-production side and having that sort of extra time, because I know talking to other guests, sometimes you don't have that enough pre-prep, or you're sort of rushing it or doing 6th and 7th days and sort of working long hours to the point that probably comes, even though it gets detrimental to your health, but then also to the show, because you don't know how you could still be working on stuff and doing things. Then also it's interesting as well, like the process that you're mentioning, especially in that sequence in the first episode with the car, where what a horrible sequence to watch.
You're welcome.
It's terrifying because it's not just it's like the idea of being stuck in a car, but then also the way that it just plays out, and you're like, oh my gosh, you can't get out. Then you also, I'm not sure if they had it in those days, but like they've got child locks, so then you can't definitely not get out because you can't unlock it, and then yeah, man.
Yeah, it's so fun, that sequence though, because it really is, you've, from an audience, narrative ask, you're setting up like, this is the show, care about this character, empathize with him, hope that he does well, but also what the show is, we're all very savvy audiences, watchers, especially, fans of horror. So when to anticipate certain shifts and whatnot. And we don't ever want to treat the audience as naive to the experience. So that sequence, it's like, as soon as Maddie gets in the car and the family and the camera cuts into the car and they start to talk, something wrong is going to happen. There's no way cinematically for audiences to not immediately have their, hackles up. So then the task that Andy and I were trying to figure out is like, all right, so let's play something very soothing on the radio. And then when the girl's touching the liver, like, do we have like really unnerving music there? Or is it actually more unnerving to like not have anything there? Because the audience is already expecting and anticipating it. So which point do you lean into that? And at which point you try and go like, no, like anything you're feeling's not a problem at all. So yeah, had a lot of fun.
But then it's also scary because it's like you kind of subvert the expectation. It's like they put something calming on, and then just something's not right, and it adds even more to it. And you think, no, this can't be. Yeah, can't be doing this. No, and please.
And it's unrelenting. It's the longer the sequence goes on, the more you feel the like, something horrible is going to happen, but what degree of horrible? And then of course, her being pregnant and it's starting to move, like there's only one way this is going to go. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's a no from me. Pennywise doesn't turn up for some time in the show, which I guess because you've got the 2 films prior to it, so I guess as an audience members you can you have an idea of what Pennywise is, but I think even like building up to it, you think it's not until like episode 3 that they reveal like a clown, but like you're building up to it. Do you feel like in a way because the audience members have already been introduced to the idea of Pennywise and the various things and shenanigans that he gets up to, do you find whilst editing you need to figure out like a different way to introduce audiences back into this world, but then also there could be new audiences joining as well?
Oh, totally. I mean, you want the show to be something that fans of the films, fans of the books, fans of the Stephen King universe will fall in love with, but it is a prequel. Like, people could just as easily come to the show first, find it fascinating, and then go back to the movies and go back to the books. And so each one of these components needs to stand on their own and needs to have like a texture that enriches the experience for whatever the audience has brought to the table. And I think that's great. I think it's really cool that there's people who had never seen anything and this was their first entry, and that it's just as empathetic, just as terrifying, and isn't dependent on knowing everything about the lore. But then if you go back and learn, okay, who were the first Losers Club from the original movies, like, oh, Stanley Uris, that's his father, who's the older brother of Teddy, and so there's all these little textures that you can discover in whichever order that you've experienced it in. But we always are looking for little Easter eggs to incorporate for eagle-eyed viewers, because I think that's one of the things that audiences who are such loyal fans to the franchise have come to appreciate about it. So I look for Easter eggs in editing that aren't just tongue-in-cheek for audiences, but are also ways to enhance what we're trying to say about the world. So like in episode 2, in the supermarket scene with Lily, there's this supermarket music that's playing over the radio. And it's actually the same music that's playing in the pharmacy sequence in It Chapter 2, when Eddie goes to get his inhaler and we flash back to him as a child. And for me, it wasn't just meant to be this like, well, I loved that music and I want to use it again in this sequence, but also this idea of like, what is Derry as a town? And like, how do you subtly convey this feeling that the town doesn't change that easily, and everyone's kind of in this fog and moves through space in this out of time experience. And so maybe somebody who's got a really good sense of musicality will go, that's the same cue from this movie I saw 4 years ago. But I'm not expecting anyone to do that. But maybe there's this gut feeling that you just feel intuitively of like something feels familiar but different but wrong. And so those all elements are all interwoven throughout the fabric of the TV show. And I think it's one of the things, it's one of the reasons Andy and Barbara brought me onto the show, that I had such a familiarity from the movies, and I love the movies so much. And so I was always looking for ways to honor those textures in the TV show. And the TV show needs to stand on its own, does stand on its own, but those homages between the three mediums all have a shared language.
I think as well, like in a way that like as audience, once you have that shared language, you basically have like your foundations of how you want to do things really. And I do like the idea of like, even though it is set in the same sort of universe, you can still go in blind with it and enjoy it. And there might be certain Easter eggs that you might not pick up on, which is fine, because it's just one of those things. It's not always going to be something that you might pick up on. But then there's also stuff that you might miss because there's so much going on in the show sometimes, and they're sort of just slightly peppered in a bit more. But it's just those sort of elements. And I do like that, as I said as well, you can go in, you don't need to watch it part 1, part 2 to actually understand what's going on. If anything, it's probably better to maybe watch this first to get like an understanding, to then go back to the shows and be like, we'll go back to the film, sorry. And, be like, and then be like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's, Stanley's dad that's had this before. But then they get put into that same trance of like the town not moving forward with what's going on and kind of accepting of being like this odd place.
Completely. It's fun because it's, for me, I worked on It Chapter 2, but not the first It. And I watched the first It before I even interviewed for It Chapter 2. But it was only obviously after I'd worked or seen the first movie that I went back and read the books. And then I've read the book multiple times since then. But so throughout the history of movie making and adaptations of books, like, people are always coming to the table in different orders than how things were crafted. And that's really fun because it happens to all of us. Whatever version of the story you're first connected to will be the first foundation. But maybe it was built in different ways for other people.
I think as well, like having a book that's been around for so long, even though it's so meaty, people still sort of, there's something that gravitates them to it. And it's not even just, these films and TV shows, but it's like, previous iterations as well. And people like Tim Curry's portrayal of Pennywise, just
Absolutely.
how different that is to, I've forgotten his first name, but Mr. Skarsgård's
Bill Skarsgård,
Bill, thank you, performance. And I guess as well, like, it just shows how material in different people's hands can create something so different and so interesting at the same time.
Yeah. And there's little Easter eggs homaging Tim Curry's version as well. Like in the first It film, when Richie walks into the clown room, there is a little Tim Curry clown in that sequence as well. There's always been a desire to honor all the various different forms that people have explored this incredible story in.
Yeah, and again, it's funny, like, people pick that up and notice it as well. What I'm curious to know about as well, because you have a VFX background by working in as a VFX editor, what I'm curious to know is, like, as somebody who has that background and that experience, when it comes to jumping in on a show like this, where there will be hidden and not so hidden VFX elements, how does your experience play into it and help you sort of build up a scene, but then also picture to know that, like, I know the VFX is unfinished here, but I know how I can sort of weave my magic into it.
Well, I work very, very closely with visual effects, and you're right. I mean, my background in visual effects has been a wonderful asset to me, both in knowing what's possible within the scope of visual effects work, and also having the language and ability to communicate what we're striving for. Our VFX supervisor, Daryl Shawchuck, and I worked very, very closely together, as with Steve Dellerson, our VFX producer. And they were so instrumental in bringing the finished version of the world to life for Andy and I. And Daryl and I would spend tons of time together, both, when he would provide me previs for a sequence, like the station wagon sequence, the movie theater massacre, the mother thing sequence, the pickle dad sequence. All of those had very intentional previs designed, and I would cut those to begin with so that we had a roadmap for where we wanted the show to go. And then when we would go and Andy would film it, there'd be these new ideas that he would discover in the moment because of how incredible the cast were at bringing it all to life. And then, of course, that would mean added complexities for visual effects afterwards. And I would work very closely with Daryl to figure out where to hide certain scenes, where to, bring certain things to life. And it's an incredible relationship, editorial and visual effects. And I think those two departments go hand in hand pretty intrinsically. I tend not to want to treat those as separate departments with separate agendas, because we all want to make the version of the sequence, version of the episode and show be its best version. And so I'm always looking for ways to be intentional in my editing in ways that are achievable. And I if maybe if there's budgetary concerns and we need to make sure, like, where can we make concessions so that biggest bang for our buck is visible, in this one sequence. Knowing what is the most essential for the audience, and working with the team to find those trims and whatnot, is very helpful.
I think as well, like, as audience members, you forget that, like, even though VFX are a separate department and so is editing, it's important that you have to be in tandem, because you could have an idea or something, but what they're creating might be slightly different. But then also it gives you an idea to be like, well, we can, if you're, maybe if you're finding a struggle, if you're struggling to cut something, they might just show you, like, this is what we have in mind. And then you think, like, Bob goes off, we're ready. I know exactly what we want to do. Because it could be like that. Sometimes you could be stuck in like a creative corner and they're like, don't worry, we've got you.
Right, absolutely. Well, we would call Steve, Daryl, and I like the brain trust of, like, Andy can be very precious about people seeing work that is not fully realized yet. That you want to make sure that what you're presenting to the studio, presenting to the network, is very much Andy's vision. But Andy had full permission to the effects and I that, like, that didn't include them, that they could sit with me during dailies and we could talk through the sequence, talk through where the complexities might be, and how we go about ensuring that Andy's vision was realized on screen. So yeah, it was a very, very close collaboration. I just adored working with the two of them.
I think that's really important as well, like with studios, because it's going to sound, not to sound mean, and I don't mean for this to sound mean or rude, but like sometimes people don't understand the vision until you've seen the sort of closer or the like closest to finish version of it, especially if it's stuff that you might not understand or be like, why is this VFX not done? It's like, actually this sort of element actually takes a lot of time. You're mentioning about the volume, like that was probably easier to cut and do rather than it all to be blue screen, as you're mentioning, because you'll have to paint every scene out, play out and take time. Somebody might watch the whole scene, but then there might be one or two scenes where you see the blue screen, they're like, why hasn't this been done? Whilst the volume kind of helps it out a bit more, as an example. But please correct me if I'm wrong and I'm talking
No. I mean, I think it's twofold. I think as our editing systems have gotten so much more robust, and as assistant editors have really taken it upon themselves to become jack of all trades and really good about doing temp visual effects, there has been this feeling of, in editorial, wanting the version that you send at every stage of the process to feel as close to finished and fleshed out as possible. But I mean, I will say we had amazing partners in HBO. There were definitely moments where we were apprehensive ahead of time of, like, are they going to feel like we've pushed something too far? Like going back to the station wagon sequence, the full frontal birth of the mutant baby. We very much intended for them to come back and say, you can't be on this angle. You can't show this shot. You can't show this amount of blood. You can't show this amount of time. You have to hide things in shadow or whatnot. And they were amazing partners and really allowed Andy carte blanche and very much lived up to their slogan of, like, it's HBO, not television, and allowed us to, push the limits that Andy wanted to push and not restrain him due to some sort of, TV guideline mandate. So yeah, they were wonderful partners to us.
Out of curiosity, how does it work in terms of, like, what you can and can't show for TV? Because I know with, like, the cinemas, and you have people who sit down and they have their board ratings, and they'll go through and tell you, like, if you cut out a minute and 2 seconds, it will give you an R rating instead of an NC-17. How does it work in TV?
It doesn't exist.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean there's because this was HBO, like there are obviously standards and practices in television. There are things you can say, cannot show. But HBO and the streaming environment, there are not those kinds of restrictions. So we were not constrained the way that trying to make a PG-13 rating film where you're like right at the line of what's considered extreme violence or not. And we've definitely had to be very diligent on prior films about not crossing that line because the PG-13 rating was so important to us. But that wasn't a concern on this one. We had full permission to go as nutty as we wanted, which we did.
Yeah, I guess in a way as well, like you could kind of you could push it a bit too far, and then somebody could say no, scale back, rather than not, because it's TV. Yeah, interesting. I wonder who has to sort of sign that off and be like, well, should we do this? Should we not do this? But as you said with HBO, they're the gold standard. So, as you said, they can kind of push the limits a lot more than someone else. Because you're working with Andy on episodes, and he's the showrunner. Then also you're working with two other directors, Andrew Bernstein and also Jimmy Travis. As an editor, because you're working so close with a showrunner, how does it work when you're working with directors and how they want to portray their vision, but then also stay in tow to Andy's vision and the vision overall of the show?
Andy is very collaborative with other creatives, and so for Andy, he sets that tone that he really wanted. So I'll start with Jamie Travis, and he directed episode 6 that I cut for him and for the show, and he was very passionate about exploring every angle in the footage. In TV, there can be, with DGA requirements, there's a set number of days that a director can get for their director's cut. But Andy was very much take the time to dive into the footage and don't share it until you're actually satisfied and feel like you've gone through every angle. And I think that was such a gift for us for episode 6 because it allowed Jamie to discover other versions of how we wanted to weave the story than we're just there on the script page. Because our show, by its nature, it's a huge ensemble cast, and there are times where our ensembles cross paths with each other, and then there are times where everyone's fractured. And episode 6 is a really great example of a very fractured part of that story. Lily's off on her own. Ronnie's gone to be with her dad. We're finding, following Dick Halloran. He's in one place. We're following Leroy Hanlon. So everyone's kind of off doing their own thing. And it's such a great way to explore the characters and their headspaces, right before the penultimate episode and the big, inciting or big calamity event we're propelling the story towards. But that also poses an interesting editorial exercise of which order do you want to check in with everyone, and what is scripted might not feel like the most emotional, most earnest way to weave the story together. And so Jamie and I spent a lot of time in that director's cut figuring out where we wanted to enter, whether we wanted to stay with the character through multiple scenes, if we wanted to intersect that journey with another sequence. And so that discovery process with Jamie was really, really exceptional. And it's such a testament to Andy and the freedom that he gave Jamie to do that exploration process with me. Because when Andy did come to the table to do his final executive producer pass and hone in the episode together with me, we didn't change the order as much because the discovery that Jamie and I had done and all the iterating had unlocked what felt the truest for that episode. And so that was really wonderful. And then for episode 4, which was Andrew Bernstein's episode, I actually took over the Native American storyline for that episode, which it was really important to Andy and Barbara to ensure that that storyline was told by an authentic Native voice. So that footage was shot by Tasba Chavez, who is a wonderful filmmaker and is Native. So it, the episode as a whole was Andrew's, but those components, I was working very closely with Tasba. There's so much that you don't understand if you haven't lived that experience. And there's things culturally that, as an editor, it's really important for me to ensure that I'm honoring these voices, this history, these actors, this storyline, and not making a parody of things, not being disrespectful in any way. And you can only ensure that authenticity by listening to people whose experience it is. So Tasba was instrumental in that process, as was Kimberly Guerrera, who played Rose. She was such a wonderful advocate for the Native characters in our show. And then we also had a wonderful Native American consultant as well, who was very, very hands-on, very helpful.
When you have something like that, do you do a bit more research into people's cultures and understanding, or try to get an understanding of like what their life might be like, but also the hardships of what's come before them as well?
Well, and also there have been Native storylines told in, film and television before, but sometimes those have been where, the Native voice is cast aside in a certain phase of the process, or the music choices feel, in some way contrived. And so it's so important to listen to people from that culture and community, because there's things that you might not know. Like, we're telling a very specific experience of an indigenous tribe in northern Maine. So that is a specific tribe with a specific lived experience. And then you're making sure that, if they're Penobscot, that you are doing the research of what Penobscot means. What are their traditions? What are their cultures? What are their clothing garments? And then this, what is their mythology? And then ensuring that you're honoring that, and always paying respects to the authentic history of a place.
Yeah, and I guess now, like, when we're living in a time where you can, like, things change so much in terms of like the geopolitical landscape, that you can tell things, I don't want to say not better, but as in more detail, and actually shine a light on these things or people's stories that have been overlooked.
Oh, totally. Well, it honestly goes into the larger impetus behind the show itself, because that is really, Stephen King wrote it as an allegory. Pennywise is meant to be metaphorical in many ways to the kind of innate evilness that exists in this country. And so we talk about, there's a line in episode 2 where a townsman says to Clint Bowers, the police chief, "This ain't America, this is Derry." But this is America. And, we may be telling a story that takes place in 1962, but racism, persecution, the ability to willfully ignore atrocities is as true then as it is now, if not more than ever. And so there's an obligation in telling these stories that it isn't just playing for shock and awe, that there is respect and intentionality behind the choices that we're making as filmmakers, and that you're asking audiences to come to the table in some ways with the willingness to look this awfulness in the eyes.
Yeah, 100%. And then also having that open mind about it, and how it's kind of like been in front of you a little bit the whole time.
Absolutely.
Really.
And is Pennywise more a scapegoat for like did Pennywise cause the black spot burning? No, the people did, the people of Derry. So who's the real evil in this world.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I guess also, like, as a conversation, like, you could have with people about, like, is Pennywise actually is Pennywise actually real? Was it just a manifestation of the whole town and that evilness,
Right.
how it
Right.
seeps in to the world? I've got 3 more questions. For my third and final question, what was your favorite scene that you didn't edit?
I mean, the black spot burning, 1000%. And it really goes, I thought the way that Matt Colonna and Grant Wooldridge cut that episode is so beautiful. And it really goes into what I was just saying of how great horror has more subtlety than just, somebody got their arm bitten off. Whoa. And that episode is really all of the elements that we were trying to infuse throughout the season was propelling us to that moment. And I just thought it was beautifully constructed, especially Rich's death. I thought that scene was such a gut punch. It was so beautifully done. And I remember sitting in Grant's room when he was showing me his first pass on the scene. And there was a moment where Rich leans down to kiss the top of the refrigerator that Marge is inside. And the kiss sound was so soft. It was like a butterfly kiss. And I remember asking him what sound effect he had put in because it was so perfect and innocent and tragic. That was a really beautiful sequence to watch come together.
It's a solid scene as well, and
Yeah.
I think sometimes if you watch a scene where I think maybe there'd be a hint of jealousy, saying, "Oh, I wish I could have done that one." But then sometimes you look at it, and you think, actually, I'm not sure if I could have done it any better job because you've done it so well. For my penultimate question, what was your favorite scene to edit?
In episode 2, there's a sequence where Lily and Ronnie are in the cafeteria, and Lily and her friend Marge have been going through a bit of a rough patch, and Marge is really trying to fit in with the popular clique. And Lily's come to terms with that's not a group of friends she wants to belong with, and she's going to sit with Ronnie. Ronnie starts to tell her about Pennywise's appearance to her the night before in this horrible sequence. Marge is sitting over with the popular kids, and they start playing a game of patty cakes, which is this very Americana, hand clapping game, very of the era. And as Lily and Ronnie start arguing about how they're going to go about it, we intercut the sequence with the girls clapping, and the clapping rhythmically sets the tone for that sequence. And I love that sequence so much because it's actually it was an editorial discovery. It was not how the scene was intended. The scene, as scripted, was, they were in a shared space, but it was almost like checking in, and the scenes being these self-contained moments. And it actually goes back to my assistant, Janie Gaddy, because we would watch everything together and talk through everything. And that was her idea, this idea of using the rhythm of the clapping to be the percussion of the sequence. And once we put it together, it was like there was no other version of the scene that could exist. Like that was the footage calling to us. It was really, I think it's my favorite sequence because I really love how it was constructed and how emotionally we're creating a sense of anxiety for the audience so that they're feeling the headspace that all of these characters are feeling. But I also love that sequence because it's such a testament to the strength of an assistant editor relationship. And I really had that in Janie because she was such a creative collaborator with me, and I wouldn't have been able to do the show without her. And she was amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how important your team is creating, in working together and creating magic, especially in edit. I think it's quite interesting that scene was found in the edit rather than sort of was planned. But I guess that's also like one of those happy accidents when you're working on stuff for it to be played out that way.
Yeah. Well, it also is it's a testament to Andy allowing the actors the freedom, because the girls, this clique called themselves the Patty Cakes, the main character's Patty. But Andy actually, he's Argentinian, he's not American, and he actually didn't know that the Patty Cakes was this clapping game. And so when they were in the rehearsal process, the girls brought that to him, and he was like, I love that, let's explore that, let's do that. And so that's the reason it wasn't an innate texture in the episode. It was him allowing the cast the freedom to explore the characters for him shooting it, allowing the actors that vulnerability in that space. And, with working with Marge, he was, on the footage, I could hear him being like, more maniacal, and he got her to this incredible state where she's like actually crying. And so to have the gift of that footage and then be able to craft it and find it in the edit was really wonderful. And Andy allows the freedom of possibility at so many stages of the process, which is a gift.
Yeah, and I guess as well, like it's amazing how certain cultural things don't translate or we don't know about, but then also how actors are just sort of, we're going to be the Patty Cakes, we could do this. Yeah, it's just funny how they're able, people can collaborate, and then Andy being like, yeah, let's run with it and see how it goes. Which is a very sort of, again, it's all a collaborative process filmmaking, but like with it being like necessarily his baby and allowing people to sort of come in, then kind of just changes his way of thinking, and also as we've seen with the final scene, how it plays out. Yeah, it's a really good scene.
Well, it's with Andy and Barbara, they're a brother-sister duo, and I think that family aspect, they set the tone for that in the creative experience. So editing any art form, but for me, editing is such a vulnerable experience, and so there's so much trial and error, and there's a lot of asking, is this working, is this effective, and having that gut check of if it's not, why is it not, and keeping going back to the well to reiterate. But Andy allows that vulnerability and needs it for the creative process. Yeah, I feel like Andy and Barbara are family at this point. I've worked with them for 7 years now, and I think that is honestly one of the reasons the show turned out so well. I think that everyone who came to the table felt like family and came with the level of vulnerability and comfort that comes from knowing that nobody will tell you off for exploring and being curious about something to the fullest.
And I guess when you have those family and people, you just basically build up more trust as well with people, and I think as well, you champion one another as well more to be like, actually, no, go with this. Do you know what? Somebody doesn't need to tell you how to do something. You know how to do it, but then also they'll happily let you put your add your spice to the stew as well. And
1,000%.
I guess that's perfect with people, perfect working relationship, because it just allows to just to kind of go with it and have fun with their work rather than be worried about turning up to work and being like, here we go, another day.
We would joke in post. I think Grant coined this, but on some jobs you get Sunday scaries, and we never had Sunday scaries on this job. It was every single time the weekend would come to an end, and we would get ready for the week ahead. It was with so much excitement and enthusiasm, and we're a family. Not just my relationship with Andy and Barbara, but my relationship to the whole post team. Matt, Grant, Glenn, and I we ate lunch together every single day. We had this great prank that we would play on. We were editing on the Warner Brothers lot, and the conference table where we would eat our meals had a window that was right along where the Warner Brothers tram would come past. We took it upon ourselves to start marketing the show early by scaring the trams. So we had like 2 years of like we would like put our hand on the glass and jump scare people, and like we would put a yellow raincoat on and stalk the trams. We would have a Pennywise mask. Like we had so much fun with it, and it would both break up the day in exciting ways, but it also was us just loving what we were making and wanting other people to feel that love too.
Yeah, I guess as well, people must have been like, a couple of years ago, like, yeah, I remember somebody was doing that on our tour. It's like, yeah, because they got the show coming. It's like,
absolutely.
It's like penny drop moment. Holy crap. Didn't realize. Just to wrap up this episode, is there anything you want to ask me, or is there anything that I might have missed in my questions regarding the show?
That's a good question. Which character did you of the Losers Club in this era did you connect with the most? We find like there's so many versions of the characters that are each audience member will I think resonate with a different character and see themselves in someone. I'm curious who you connected with.
That's a really good question. It's caught me slightly off guard. But I think as well, in a way, I kind of feel like I might say two. And I think that might be slightly cheating, but I think, well, why not? I think in a way connect a little bit to Ronnie. I think because I think maybe it's just the kind-hearted nature of her, and that's the sort of thing that like you like to see on screen. I guess also the fact that you've got a certain time period, so you're kind of maybe it's like you see the good in a person in a way, so then I think you want to root for them, and they're always sort of looking out. I think, as you said, in the argument side about even in the episode 2 is like the argument that she's like trying to look out for her dad, because she understands like the magnitude of it and what it could mean. I think also Matty in a way, that's mainly because it's like I don't want to say like because he's like quite the outsider. And there's just something about it where you're like, maybe in life, because we've all, well, I'd say we all, but there's moments where you're move school or you're doing certain things where you kind of go somewhere and you're like, I feel so out of place. I don't feel right. Something's not right, or I don't feel correct. And even like moments where he, like where he goes to the cinema for free, it's like trying to escape his life by going there and whatnot. Yeah, I think there's probably those two, I'd say.
Those are beautiful answers. I love that.
Yes. Esther, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You asked some incredible questions. I really enjoyed diving into the show with you.
Yes, nailed it again. It's Welcome to Derry. It's streaming now on HBO. I think it's HBO Max, and then HBO Max in the UK as well. Go out and watch Esther and her team's amazing work. Thank you again. You take care, and bye-bye now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.